Go ahead.
My presentation tonight is about the technology gap in the banking industry. The banking industry has gone through tremendous change since the housing crash of 2008. The damage done by deregulation by 2008 had already caught up to all segments of the banking industry, causing a widespread housing crisis. While technology was taken off in many other sectors, we're seeing large growth potentials. The banking industry stalled. The Dodd-Frank Act in 2010 created a post-crisis consumer protection regulation, which stifled the banking industry. Those regulations were required in order to protect consumers from the same type of actions which created the crisis. However, in this post-crisis period, many consumers have looked for ways to make the simplest actions more convenient. People are looking to be able to access their money at any time they please. They want the ability to be able to make large purchases as well as manage their investments from the palm of their hands. While many banks have rushed to fill this need, the banking industry itself has had its hands tied from the perspective of how these technologies are disrupting business as usual. Everything starting with simple technologies used by investment banks to make simple transfers to how to handle individual users' privacy has to go through regulators. There was a time when I worked with a bank which knew what technology that the technology that they were using was about to be sunsetted. Instead of making changes to their banking system so that technology would no longer be used, they decided instead to create a sandbox type of environment so that they could continue to use the plugin that was no longer supported on their customers' browsers. Another bank decided the same thing, that they would rather pay for licensing for themselves and leave the investors' browsers on the older versions of software just so they wouldn't have to change. The reason why this change is so difficult is because regulators constantly need to verify and review any changes made to their technology processes, which involve the transfer of money from one entity to another. While these measures are necessary, they do not make up for the gap left behind with outdated technology. Many people will continue to use outdated Java plugins in order to access certain areas of banking, as well as Flash, which is no longer supported. ATMs will continue to use Windows XP and Windows 7, as well as Java to conduct your financial transactions. And you as a consumer need to decide if this is something that you find acceptable. So services such as Venmo, Apple Pay, and Google Pay have already made strides into the banking industry, blurring the line between what is commercial banking and retail. What's yet to be determined is how consumers will react to how these services are handling their data and their privacy. We already know that there are already so many companies which have been breached or continue to use unhygienic security practices in order to store our data.
1 minute.
As consumers, we want convenience, but we also want our data to be secured and kept private. As security professionals, we all know just how difficult it is to navigate the waters between convenience and security. The next decade will be a huge decade of change for how consumers access their money, their buying power, and who has access to that data. We may be looking back at the 2020s as a period of time, just like we did back in the 1990s when Netscape was huge. Just like today, Venmo is huge. It's our responsibility to provide a service which will be secure, protect our privacy, innovative, and continue to drive the economy in the traditional ways of banking. But we must do away with walled gardens, legacy systems, and services which monetize our privacy. Banking and technology will have to intersect, but not completely run over consumers' rights.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.